have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hammond, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
FREE is an acronym for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And it was facilitated initially by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who you mentioned a few minutes ago, a former astronaut who was the sixth person to walk on the moon. And he, along with other scientists, like the noted physicist Rudy Field, Dr. Rudy Shield of Harvard University, Ray Hernandez, Mary Ellen Guiley, Mary Rodwell, among many others, have been involved in an extensive research program for the past 2 years, whereby we've obtained over 2,800 individuals who have claimed to have had conscious recall of experiences with UFOs and or non-human intelligent beings. And well, it is a small world, and I know you had Dr. Jacobs as a guest just recently, and I just spoke with my good friend Mary Rodwell the other day, just prior to her extraordinary journey here to the United States from Australia, and they'll have a nice little chat, I'm sure, both Mary and Jacobs. Nevertheless, I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that one. But getting back to FREE, this is the first comprehensive study of such a large data set in individuals who claim to have conscious recall, as I mentioned earlier. Some prior studies have been conducted on a much smaller scale and generally using hypnotic regression, which is questionable at some level, not discounting it entirely. But nevertheless, the results are quite startling. And over the course of our show, I hope to certainly address that and what the possible implications may be of those results. So it is quite distinct from that perspective, and the effect it has on the individual is something that I think ufology in general should focus more attention to. We have been involved in ongoing research for several decades, and a great deal has been learned, and I commend all of those who have been involved in a variety of different ways, giving their time and attention, considerable effort to this phenomenon, which is real in my mind, and unfortunately it's largely ignored by mainstream science, as we all know. And that is the paradox. We have a real phenomenon that is substantial, that is impacting the lives of thousands, if not millions of individuals worldwide for who knows how long. And we need to better understand what is going on, the essence of the nature that governs the force, in a sense, that is exerting its influence on individuals, many of who live in fear, who are reluctant to share their experience with others. And we need to bring our research results to the forefront, to provide a foundation by which humankind can become more familiar with this phenomenon, which we can't explain. We're far from that. I think we need to, at this point in time, focus more attention than what we have over the past numerous decades to better understand the phenomenon from the person's experience, the essence of the experience, and the transformative changes that it does have in the individual, which are largely positive, which goes against what Jacobs has been advocating. But nevertheless, when 2,800 people, over 90% of them, say that these experiences are positive in nature, in many different ways, which we will get into in greater detail. But the impact on the quality of life, their belief system, their attributes, personality, etc., are remarkably altered as a result of their experience. Not 100%, not positive in every single case. And initially, it is a very fearful event. But we're learning a great deal, and that's the essential point here, about how the phenomenon does impact humans. Ufology needs to move in this direction, I believe. A great deal, again, has been done to learn a lot about the phenomenon, but too much time is simply being wasted on rehashment, reanalysis of all the events that we are more than familiar with. We're not going to learn anything more about the phenomenon through continual discussion, debate on Roswell, Rendlesham, Phoenix. It's entertaining. It's very informative. We do learn a lot about that. It's far from it. And I think in order to convince mainstream science that this is a phenomenon that should garner greater attention from that community across many different disciplines, not just the hardcore sciences, but psychology, sociology, anthropology, etc. We need to have a multidisciplinary team of high-level scientists and non-scientists, experiencers as well, who have to study what is going on here. I keep listening to radio shows, and it's entertaining. I do learn a lot. Much of it is quite nonsensical, to be quite honest with you. And you have your whole spectrum of interviewees as well, as all radio hosts do, all personalities in the media business do. And you have many extraordinary guests, and I commend you, by the way, for the quality of guests that you do have in your show. Myself excluded, but the point is I do enjoy your show for that reason, as well as the fine job you do. But getting back to the essential piece here, I'm giving a talk at the International UFO Congress in February, and obviously I'll discuss the results of free. And I'll also be talking about my perspectives on ufology, which, again, in my mind is in disarray and needs to be altered in dramatic ways. How going about doing that may be impossible at this point in time, but at least there should be some advocacy to do so, simply because we are not making progress. We haven't for a long time. Yet we have learned a lot. Congrats to you all, the Stanton Friedmans of the world, Newton Howe, etc. Nevertheless, too many conclusions that are not scientific fact, that established cause-effect relationships of varying kinds within the field of ufology are so out there, are so far out, with lack of supporting evidence to support the conclusions that are made on all too frequent basis, gives ufology a bad name. With few exceptions, yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the large problem with ufology in general. It is highly speculative, it's highly theoretic, and it does lack fact. And in part, that's the nature of the phenomenon itself. It simply can't, of course, measure it in a laboratory setting, and nor do we have the current scientific principles to adequately apply to understand the force that governs and regulates its behavior, and especially its impact on individuals, which we know too little of, and we need to learn more, as I mentioned earlier. But I get turned off, as many people do, by these theories that lack support. Free is attempting, however, to provide some objectivity in terms of trying to maintain validity or reliability aspect to the research methodology itself, which we can't do 100%, given the nature of the phenomenon, given the fact that we have to rely on surveys, as well as questionnaires and interviews on, again, thousands of individuals. And what is uniquely interesting is that over 75% of individuals who report some type of experience with UFOs or non-human intelligent beings say it's positive. As I mentioned earlier, they're more concerned for the environment, less concerned for monetary values, more loving in an unconditional way, more empathetic, more caring, more spiritual, less of a belief in organized religion. They change in so many dramatic ways that you say to yourself, gee, let me go through this experience. If this is what's going to happen in the vast majority of cases, then, let me be selfish and undergo the same type of experience. But the point is, why the similarity of responses? And to that, we have no clue. And it's certainly premature to make any kind of conclusion as to what is going on. Is this a possible psychological disorder of the mind induced by something that we are simply unfamiliar with? Or, in fact, are people actually having upfront and close encounters with intelligences from somewhere, someplace, somehow? And that is something that we're not going to truly understand. It probably in our lifetime, if not beyond, unless we live forever. But at the very least, we need to understand how it does affect the individual. And it is largely positive, despite what Bud Hopkins contends. But our results on such a large sample size suggest that this information is meaningful. It remains to be seen what the etiology of it is. Nevertheless, about 70% of the individuals claim to have telepathic communication with these beings. Most are, believe it or not, human-looking. About 55% of those 2,800 who have conscious recall of this experience say the majority are human-looking, followed, not surprisingly, by the short grays, then the tall grays, reptilians, insectoids, etc., are the next frequent in nature. Many claim to have an alien breeding program that they're involved with as well. Oftentimes references made to having sexual activity, being given a hybrid child, a sense of knowingness that the child is hers, for instance. But at a much less frequent basis than what the literature in ufology has provided in the past, which often equates abductions to the collection of eggs and sperm and alien babies. We're seeing some of that, but it's in a relatively small minority. About 15% say that is the case. Apparently, they do report that, however. But they also believe that there's a grand plan in motion of some type, and they feel over 90%, approximately 90%, say it is spiritual in nature, trying to raise the consciousness of this planet, have everybody become more loving, more forgiving, more caring. Things we're not entirely too surprised of. And we see some glimpses of this in some of the studies that have been done by John Mack from Harvard University. Jacques Vallée has given some evidence to this as well. John Keel, to name a few. And I commend, certainly, those individuals, among others along those lines, who have, again, focused on the effect this is having on the individual, because that's more meaningful. And let's, again, speculating is fine. We can't help but not to do that. We're going to speculate on these results. Don't expect me to have an answer. It's premature to do so. And anybody that does, it's not It's not looking at the data realistically. The question is something profound is occurring, and that's the only thing I can say with absolute certainty. What is governing that, again, remains to be seen. But it is so significant in nature. Fortunately, it seems to be positive to a large extent. The fact that it's happening to so many individuals, it should garner the attention of psychologists and sociologists, let alone the top quality physicists of the world, to focus their attention from their own perspective discipline and apply what they know of their trades to better understand the nature of the phenomenon, if at all possible. And we may not be able to. All I can say, and it's a fair question, is based on the results. And 2,800 individuals who claim to have conscious recall of their experiences with UFOs and non-human intelligent beings, 90% say that these entities are peaceful. Doesn't mean it's 100%, but again, it's in large contrast to some of the conclusions that are being made, as you mentioned. Why these conclusions are made, I don't entirely know. But all I can say is that maybe there's some truth to what they're saying, and I would like to think there's some truth to what we're saying. The point is, this is one reason why we need to draw attention from other researchers, not just the Greers and the Hopkins, et cetera, in order to get different perspectives, because we're going to keep on debating, we're going to keep on having controversy until we again manifest in some unified governance process where we unite worldwide in one under one umbrella, call it whatever you want, but utilize existing organizations, add new ones, add new individuals, that is, scientists, the bureaucrats, whatever, in order to focus greater attention, money, effort, time, commitment, research to this phenomenon. Otherwise, we're going to continue to hear the same old stuff on the shows, read them in books of various types, various themes, but essentially the same message. A lot of it is unbelievable. It's entertainment. A lot of people buy it. The New Agers buy it. But it gives ufology a very bad name. And I don't want to contribute to it. Maybe I am to some extent. But all I can say is these are the results. As carefully as done as possible and in as scientific manner as possible as far as survey research goes, as far as interviews go. And we do have some leading psychologists who have been involved in qualitative research who's going to look at the qualitative responses to over 70 questions that addresses the things we're talking about. The impact it has on their lives, the type of the physical and psychological contact experiences, how it has changed them, transformed them, among many other aspects of it. And most of these individuals claim they have been abducted, for instance, more than 10 times throughout their life. It's not a one-shot deal. Many make reference to DNA. Many make reference to oneness, understanding life. Over 80% say they understand what life is all about. As a result of their experience, they understand what their purpose in life is, the meaning for life. About 75-80% say they don't fear death anymore. There's often mention of reincarnation, continuity of consciousness, that we live before, we live after. Why? I don't know. In part, it's telepathic messages from the beings they encounter, or a sense of knowingness. Here again, conscious recall, so they claim. I don't believe it necessarily 100%. Be careful interpreting all data you read in ufology too literally. Always look at it objectively if at all possible, because we often want to believe in beings who are visiting us. I do. I think most people do. It sounds sexy. It's entertaining. It's stimulating. It's exciting. Maybe it's happening. I'm not discounting that possibility, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's beings in some, as we all are familiar, some other dimension that coexists with ours. Many physicists like Hawking, Green, Dave, Baum, Kapu ascribe to that theory. Is it true? Maybe, maybe not. Again, we have yet to prove it conclusively, scientifically speaking, although it has been demonstrated mathematically and exists in theoretical form. Is that what is at play here? Maybe. But the point is, we're not at the point where we can adequately come to terms in terms of understanding what's going on, in terms of communicating formally as a governance structure with these beings that for some reason, if they exist, if they are interacting with us, and I say if, our results suggest that they are, let you decide, let your audience decide. And eventually we'll be giving talks, and we do shows, of course, on the radio, and putting things in publication in scientific journals eventually. The point is, let others build on this research, and let others look at the data, interpret it as they see fit. I'm sure there'll be a great deal of criticism as well, and that's fine. It's good to be skeptical, and I encourage all individuals getting involved in ufology to be skeptical, because there's so much nonsense out there. You point some of that out. And there's also a great deal of sense as well. But the point is trying to decipher what makes realistic ideas from nonsense and means to sell books or just confabulation and wishful thinking, psychoses, whatever you want to call it. It's bad science, and one has to steer away, if at all possible, from such conclusions, literature, viewpoints, and it's hard to do so at times. But there are many individuals that must be commended, and I don't want to mention names. I haven't maybe earlier, but because you'll tend to leave some out, and I don't want to insult anybody. But again, thank you all for all that you do. But I do think we, as I mentioned, I don't want to rehash it, we do need to change things dramatically. And that's my opinion. So the point here, free is also involved not only in research, but also in support programs. As you well know, there's a Liberation Day for those experiences in order to share what they have in common, their experience with UFOs, non-human intelligent beings. And they're, in a sense, coming out of the closet. And there are organizations, in fact, worldwide, as you well know, that do have small-scale operations, that do provide some education, training, support for experiences. And it's interesting that the incidence statistics is much larger than we probably could ever imagine, simply because, of course, people don't want to announce to the world that they have been so-called abducted or see orbs or engage in some type of paranormal activity, which ranges from, you name it, to anything else. It comes in all shapes and sizes. UFOs, the Greys, reptilians, being just one of many other types of paranormal entities and experiences that people do report in the form of NDEs and OBEs, of course, apparitions, mediumship. In fact, I just finished a book on life after death 2 days ago. Life after death, an analysis of the evidence, should come out early next spring. And we may be looking at a UFO phenomena that's interrelated with many other paranormal experiences. Not a unique idea, but that may be the case.
Yeah, this is a text from our fan in Grand Prairie, Texas, Debbie Coffey, and she's wondering, are there medical benefits that abductees get from their experiences, like cancers being healed?
There are some reports of medical healing, yes. And not only for those who've been abducted, but also they report family members or children that have been, they claim to be medically healed. What we need to do is to interview these individuals, and we're going to be conducting interviews shortly, but we're going to specifically look at medical healing in terms of trying to document medical records of the individual before and after the claimed experience to better understand whether it was a valid report by that individual. But yes, we do hear reference of it from these individuals, indeed.
Yeah, well, I was wondering. We've heard so much about the Rh blood factor. Is there any truth to that?
If there is, it's conjecture. We do ask about Rh negative. Oftentimes reference is made to that specific type of blood type in terms of a higher incidence of abductions of those who have Rh negative blood type. We're not seeing a very strong correlation here, but we have yet to complete the analysis of the data. It doesn't seem to be much of an issue in terms of people's recall, in terms of what they're told by these so-called entities about blood type. They're more concerned with DNA. That is a much more common expression of interest that they hear from these entities. Yeah, again, the 2,800 individuals claim that human-looking entities constitute about 54% of all sightings. They also, about an equal number, they account as energy beings. This could be a glowing, transparent type of light being. Yes, exactly. Again, short grays come in a very close third place. Tall grays, about a quarter of the time. Hybrids and insectoids and reptilians, about the same percentage, about 15% in each case. But what's interesting is that human-looking individuals, what we commonly refer to as Nordic types, I would think, and people often describe them of just that type: the blonde hair, starry blue eyes. But human-looking, obviously, but still uniquely different in some respects. UFO abductions are often equated with some type of sexual behavior, as well as, again, a collection of sperm and egg for reproduction purposes, for whatever, along those lines. But here again, much less comment is made about having direct sex with aliens, although, again, about 35% report being involved in some type of alien breeding program. But it involves of a non-sex nature for that purpose. So, here again, whether or not the incident statistics are accurate remains to be seen. Or we may be dealing with many different entities for many different reasons, from many different places. Who knows? Many people also report coming in contact with non-human intelligence from many different types of galaxies. So they claim the Pleiades, among many others. So we could be looking at a spectrum, not only of human intelligences, non-human intelligent beings, that is, from many different solar systems, or it could be many different dimensions, a combination of both, or neither. We can only speculate, and I really am hesitant to get involved with that, although you can't help but develop some theories as to who, what, and why is associated with the phenomenon. It only comes natural to do so. But to be firmly committed to one belief, one conclusion, as if they come definitely from another solar system, or definitely from another dimension, or they're tricksters from a coexisting parallel universe here. It's entertaining. It's fun to do so. There could be truth to it. But we simply do not have sufficient evidence to specify conclusively if any of those are in fact the case. So we have to be very careful of what we say, and of course of who and what we listen to and believe, adopt as our own belief. There's a lot of truth again out there. There's a lot of nonsense, as I mentioned earlier. And where the information I'm sharing stands is, again, judgmental in nature. But what's quite unique is that 90% of those who have had numerous call it abductions, let's call it experiences, because not all are taken aboard. Many have the experience in the confines of their bedroom or house. And that is not an unusual location to have so-called abduction. Some are transported, in other words, through walls to the craft where they are subjected to experimentation or given a hybrid alien child or communicated with in some form. But approximately 90% do not want their experience to end. And that's critical. The question, of course, is why, and obvious answers come to mind. And here again, we can only speculate, and I don't want to get again into that game for obvious reasons. But is this possible? If we do speculate, is this a possible objective of whoever may be behind it to try to transform humankind on an individual basis, spiritually, consciously? To make them better human beings. I mean, that's one obvious speculation if we need to go in that direction. That's the only firm speculation, very tentative, that I can make. The more dramatic one is that something profound is happening. And, I don't know. I just have had lifelong interest in the phenomenon. I truly don't know. I've been a closet ufologist my whole life, and I eventually wrote a book on the heels of observing two orange orbs in the night sky in Sedona, Arizona, a very common place to have paranormal experience and observe UFOs. After I saw those orange orbs, one essentially emerged from behind it or from within it. They remained stationary and then suddenly winked out. From that moment forward, for some reason, I decided to write a book. And I did. And I just followed up with a second one. And after appearing on radio shows, I was invited to be a member of the research team and board of directors of FREE. And I'm happy to do so. So I am engaged in the research that's ongoing by a number of us. And it is a phenomenon that the vast majority of scientists, I being a neuroscience scientist, I in the small minority of so-called scientists engage in this type of research activity, which is a shame. And nevertheless, my main objective is to try to facilitate more research on the part of mainstream scientific community to raise their level of awareness that this is not a new age phenomenon, as I mentioned previously. So we have to take this more seriously on many levels, and to support those in the best way as possible who are suffering from their experience in terms of hearing ridicule from their friends and colleagues for having their experiences, and that way they're suffering. And initially, it is a very scary, frightening experience. There's no question to it for obvious reasons. Over time, they adapt, and many begin actually to look forward to it, to enjoy it, and benefit from it in positive ways, as I mentioned earlier. Do you mean the incidence of those experiences? They come in all shapes, sizes, forms, and perform maneuvers that obviously defy the laws of inertia and gravity, among other scientific principles we're currently familiar with. But they come from handheld balls of light to 2 miles long. Ask those who experienced the Phoenix Lights incidents, of course. Tremendous crafts and noiseless. Their maneuverability, their kinematic behavior are pronounced. We are all more or less familiar with that. The point is, there are so many variations to the theme. Nevertheless, there are, however, commonalities. The disc shape, ovoid being the most common, the metallic, silvery pewter type color being the more common. But here again, the variety is substantial. So you can't really ascribe XYZ to a given foreign-looking craft. Many of certainly can be advanced technology, as we are all aware, certainly. Question is, it seems premature to conclude that all are. And the nature of the phenomenon, going back many decades, if not longer, are such that it's highly unlikely that it is of human origin for a variety of different reasons. And getting back to the experience itself, what could be behind it? Could a human hand be at play? And that has been a proposed theory by some that ascribes this entire phenomenon to human origin for whatever reason, governed by whatever military reason, governance purpose. For what goal, we can only, again, conjecture, despite the many contentions held by many, that the government is fully, not the government, but some aspect of the military or Secret Service or unacknowledged access program may be involved at some level with this phenomenon. We can only speculate, and I'd like to see the hard facts to support some of the conclusions that are made to that effect, let alone many other conclusions of ongoing UFO human interactive bases, down in Dulce or somewhere in the Southwest, et cetera, or this ongoing war that we're engaged with, or some type of conflict among the entities themselves. The point is, so much different things, so many, you don't know what to believe, and there's no basis. Yeah. All I can say is I'm on Quiz Street. It's such a paradox, and it's so unfortunate, if I may say, that we contemplate these types of issues without hard evidence to support them. I commend researchers who focus attention maybe on this for their contribution in other ways, but I think they are simply making accusations that lack support for a variety of reasons, and simply serve to turn off many people within our community, inside ufology and out, and certainly mainstream science, who look at such conclusions as foolish, as inappropriate. and they deem it, the ufology, a pseudoscience and not worthy of getting involved in a research way. Yet many certainly are very interested in the phenomenon. Many do research in the phenomenon, but certainly not enough, and not enough take it seriously as they should. And those kinds of conclusions, of which there are many, and that's just one element of a far-out notion, which may very well be true. Maybe Eisenhower met with those aliens. Where are the factual documents? It's hearsay. It's anecdotal. I understand that. But I can't firmly buy it. I can't simply focus on retrospective analysis anymore. It does ufology a disservice. It gets us nowhere. It's entertainment. It's interesting. I like listening to it. I truly do. I love listening to shows, unless it gets too far out, and that's touching it right there. But again, I like to keep an open mind, be skeptical. I think that's very healthy on the part of all of us who walks of life in all ways, shape, and form, especially when you're focusing on an unexplained enigma such as ufology and associated paranormal activity. So there's a lot to be said for that, but it represents a wider issue. And that is why ufology is not given the credit it deserves for its way it attends to the phenomenon. You don't do it by making these kinds of conclusions. You make it by focusing new forms of research in as best a way possible to better understand the phenomenon and to do something about it with those who experience the phenomenon. That's where we should be devoting much more of our time and energy. It's also fine to look at ufology in other ways, too. I think that's fine. But more emphasis, more focus, attention, money, time, etc. needs to be focused in the area that I'm suggesting.
Yeah, this is a text from Joe Hernandez in Reno, Nevada. He's asking about is consciousness their main target? Are they measuring it somehow?
I don't know if they're measuring it, but they again, based on those who claim to have a conscious type of communication, more specifically non-local communication, a sense of understanding, a downloading of information, words, in fact, in English, spoken to them telepathically. They do claim that is the means of communication. And thus, consciousness doesn't necessarily mean it's being measured, but it is being accessed somehow, or they're accessing the brain. And that's a whole other element of conversation, the consciousness-brain distinction that doesn't necessarily apply here, or does it? Because people do sense being out of the body oftentimes during their so-called abduction experiences, as many individuals do, abduction, so to speak, or not. And I hate that term abduction. But perceiving reality from a 360 view, the absence of time and space, some of the aspects, in other words, of quantum physics and some of the theories that support an altered dimension seems to be consistent with the type of perceptual experience that individuals claim to have when they do undergo an abduction experience, as well as other forms of experience that are not abduction related. But nevertheless, it does seem to be a large component of this issue: consciousness, spirituality, love, oneness, the universe, we're all one. Those types of themes are often shared by individuals, and that's the main essence of the messages that they do receive. What that means is the issue. But nevertheless, it has a tremendous impact on people's lives, and we need to understand that, need to address that in some way, and maybe possibly gain some insight of the phenomenon through the messages that people claim to receive. Whether or not they're receiving it from beings from somewhere else, that is also up for conjecture and speculation. But the phenomenon is so obviously uniquely complex in so many ways that it provides a forum for more questions than answers. And and we are raising so many numerous ones, and I wish I had answers for your listeners. I'm very frustrated that I don't, but we must understand that we're only on the first rung of a very long ladder from the ground floor to the top of the World Trade Center in terms of our understanding what actually is going on. And it's very likely that there are many, many different things going on, UFOs being just one. No, I would be hesitant to do so, other than um, try to stimulate conversation, research, certainly greater interest about consciousness and how possibly that can be utilized more so if that can be developed in some way. Research experiments being conducted by Dean Radin, scientists at the Windbridge Institute on mediumship, communicating with the so-called deceased, allegedly. The effect of non-local consciousness on physical symptoms, the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University. Many different experiments, in other words, that try to better understand the impact of ESP, superpsi, non-local intuition, the effect of one's mind over matter or other individuals' EEG activity. And we see that in some experiments, how one individual's intention towards another can alter the EEG in the other individual. Well, is that true? It should be replicated. We need more research, of course, as I keep saying. Sorry for the redundancy, but that's the underlying premise here too. But certainly we need to understand whether or not non-locality is real. People claim it is insofar as their experience with these entities go. The question is, can we utilize it more so in our daily lives? And maybe not. But some of the data are quite compelling and not firmly conclusive, but does suggest the possibility of. And the Global Consciousness Project, getting off the topic a little bit, but the UFO phenomenon and other phenomena are related to this. Its impact on consciousness. It does affect us spiritually, non-locally, telepathically, in many ways. And we're transformed. Certainly, that's consciousness, possibly as well. Lost my train of thought, but the point is we have to explore that non-locality aspect and the effects of intuition and effortful concentration on physical symptoms. The Global Consciousness Project, we had Princeton University had 100 computers spitting out binary random numbers, zeros and ones on a continual basis, 24/7. And very surprisingly, the researchers who founded the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University back in the 90s said that these computers deviated significantly from randomness just prior to a global event that drew attention to it by millions of individuals worldwide. It's obviously like 9/11, like the tsunami incident, like President Obama's being elected, terrorist attacks, etc. And just only on these occasions do these computers, for some unknown reason, alter their function. Is this an unconsciousness, universal consciousness, in other words, being demonstrated at work here, or not? Here again, we need replication of the results to see if there is indeed some type of effect here. And if there is, that has quite a pronounced, I think, implication for the individual as well as society in general. And maybe that would stimulate more effort by whomever in terms of trying to develop that sixth sense, shall we call it, greater, and maybe earlier on in life in order to be successful, if it should exist. Of what we're finding, and that is quite unique in comparison to a few of the other much smaller scale studies done on individuals who have had this type of experience. But nonverbal communication, telepathy, that sense of knowing, understanding, comes across very, very frequently and vividly. It's one of the major types of impressions, shall we say, that people are moved by from their experience, obviously from so much that they have in varying ways per individual. But telepathy, yes, is one, and maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Maybe this is an example of it, but people do believe it. They become more psychic, believe it or not. Many of these individuals also claim to be healers of others. They become, yes, more spiritual. Besides the other personal attributes that have been modified, they understand, in other words, that love is the answer. I hate to be steal the line from John Lennon, but we all have heard that, and it is certainly true. But what's uniquely interesting is they come away with that same message. Now, is that a preconceived belief? Is that some internal expression that is somehow being surfaced at that time, and they believe it to be received from extraterrestrials or extra-dimensionals, whatever you may want to call them, or not? But yeah, the love, oneness. We are the children is another type of common theme that people come away with. But we are all related. We all live on. Reincarnation is real. We have a past. We have a future. Bodily death is just a transition. Being in this body is just a transitory phase on like the life-death cycle. And reincarnation happens. People don't fear death as a result, not surprisingly, like those who have near-death experiences. And the parallels of these transformative effects are quite astonishing in terms of the similarity between NDEs and UFO abductions. Why? I don't know. But it's remarkably similar. In all the things I mentioned about those who are transformed by their experience with UFOs are similarly affected from their NDEs. Besides lack of fear of death, belief in the afterlife, etc., many other ways, lack of materialistic interests, or less interest in organized religion, caring, loving, understand what life's all about, understand myself more than ever before. I don't take things for granted. All the things we want to become, they become. In fact, what's also interesting is that the divorce rate is remarkably high in experiences. Some incidents put it at 50%. Same as with NDEs. For some reason, the transformative effects are so pronounced that it changes them that dramatically to the point where they feel that they are very different than their spouse, and they wind up divorcing. The spouse may feel that the person has changed because they're now more spiritual. They're just more loving to others in an unconditional way. I should say in a more of an impersonal way, but love them, care for them, etc. And they're so different in so many ways that, it disturbs the marital relationship, unfortunately. But then we need to explore that. I would think sociologists, psychologists would be uniquely interested in that alone. Here are some papers for you, if you're listening. You may want to consider it. But here again, academics don't want to get involved with that. Bad stigma, ridicule factor. We could. There's a long list of reasons. What journal is going to publish that kind of research? Few do touch upon it, the paranormal beliefs and things like that, but not UFO abductions in the scientific journal XYZ. We don't see that. We see certainly studies on consciousness and paranormal, but more in the form of belief systems. Near-death experiences, yes, that is an accepted, certainly widely accepted, acknowledged phenomenon by the medical and scientific community. It is a real event. Obviously, we don't know firmly what it is, but everybody seems to have their opinion. Many theories do exist. Not one is adequately explainable, but it is a real phenomenon. But here again, why the parallels with NDEs and UFOs? It does exist, apparently. I certainly wish I had an answer. I bet some people do, and I would wonder why they have that answer. It would be premature for anybody, I think, in my opinion, obviously to come up with a firm conclusion. But yes, people claim. For one thing, we need to know whether or not that ability is indeed valid. Does it truly do exist? Is it distinctly different before and after the experience? We need to see that with experiences in UFOs as well, let alone with NDEs. But yes, they claim to be more spiritual, more telepathic, become more healers, psychic, predictive of future events. Maybe there's truth to it, maybe not, but we need to study it. And here again, Free's attempting, as I mentioned, to focus attention on the essence of the experience on the individual. Possibly we can get some insight into the phenomenon in that way, but at least let's try to help those who do experience and the event and who are afraid to share their experience. And again, they hold it in for many years, suffering. Regardless of the positive benefits that it does provide. It's not a pleasant experience for many, and they do need support. Let's try to provide that support and learn possibly about the phenomenon. But my main message is this. This is a real phenomenon. I have no doubt. I don't have a clue what it is. And we need to do something about ufology in order to better address this extraordinary enigma, which unfortunately, again, is largely ignored by mainstream science. And what it takes to convince many more of them to focus attention in this direction, I don't know. And that's the ultimate paradox. We have such a significantly profound phenomenon that is so worthy of research attention, yet it doesn't receive it. That, to me, is the ultimate issue at hand. And Free is making a very small dent, as well as many other organizations and foundations in their various ways. And I commend you all. I truly do. You have my utmost respect. And continue, please. My only request is that we try to focus more attention, if at all possible, in the direction of the experiencer. And Free's attempted to do that. We may be on the wrong track. Obviously we're biased. We feel we're on the right track. But at least we have a foundation of data. And let others build upon that, possibly, and interpret that. We're not going to stick our necks out and say that this is the answer. This is the way to go. Please don't interpret it that way. It's one of many different ways to go. And consider it. And let's discuss it. Let's communicate about it. And possibly, let's try to modify ufology in some respects in order to advance our understanding of this most perplexing phenomenon and to turn on many more individuals, especially mainstream science, into taking it more seriously.